'Twas the night before Christmas, a frightful delight, when killers and creatures did evil by night. A leprechaun seething sought gold stolen away, while Jack Frost was freezing folk in cold, cruel ways. St. Nicholas slaughtered on each full moon's sight. An evil Santa was unleashed from his plight, and Cindy battled beasts filled with holiday hate as they slashed through the snow, dealing dire fate. So lock all your doors and windows with care, for murderous holiday beasts could be there. Stay wary, my friend. Keep your loved ones near. Merry Christmas to all. Hope to see you next year. Welcome to Sitting in the Dark, everybody. My name is Pete Wright, and I'm here with the handsome Ray Delancey.
Hello.
And just chock full of wintry goodness, it's Tommy Metz III.
Ring-a-ding-ding. Wait, that's not a holiday thing. That's a Frank Sinatra thing. Jingle, jingle. That's
You're
it.
quite
Jingle,
a crooner.
jingle.
Quite a crooner. Look, hi, guys. So this month is my turn. It's my turn. I'll say it. And
You're the one.
I started thinking about, like, what can we do for December? What can we do to talk about scary movies and the holidays? And the thing that struck me when we have been talking about, like, metaphor for horror movies over the last, many months is, what is it that we're doing when we take these scary motifs and merge them with the holidays? So I wanted to watch movies that were about holiday horrors and not just guys dressed up as Santa Claus with knives.
Right.
Fair enough.
And we already teased this because we started talking about Krampus. And that movie is, it's about an actual evil that happens at the holidays. And it's good. We had a good time with it. It was a bonus, I think, one of the picks. The thing that struck me here is what happens when the symbols of our holidays themselves turn against us, right? What if we find ourselves running not from Frankenstein or Dracula or some other manifestation of desire and technology run amok, but what if we're running from murderous Saint Nick himself? What happens when the things we celebrate in song and prayer are recontextualized as explicit symbols of fear? That was the question, and I have a list, all movies that I had not seen with the exception of the first one, which I saw as I was a kid because Jennifer Aniston was in it. And so I just want to do a quick rundown of the movies, and then we'll talk about, I want to hear your thoughts. So the movies are Leprechaun, 1993 American film. No, not a Christmas movie, but, it fits the bill because of the character. The rest are the holiday movies. Jack Frost, not the Michael Keaton one, which arguably is as scary. Jack Frost, this is the 1997 direct-to-video black comedy. Saint, 2010 Dutch film. Rare Exports, The Finns Bounce Back. It's a 2010 Finnish film. And then I threw in a bonus at the very last minute. The Mean One, 2022 American black comedy. It is the unauthorized parody of Dr. Seuss's The Grinch. There we have it. That's our setup. I open the floor to opening statements. Tommy, the senator from California.
I'm reclaiming my time already. This is not an opening statement necessarily, but I think something that came to mind probably in the middle of Leprechaun, because I was desperately trying to think about anything else, was that we've kind of, in the way that we've taken Christmas and made it scary, is kind of the opposite of what we did with Halloween, ironically. Halloween was a terrifying thing, kind of like how we're unearthing Krampus, unearthing St. Nicholas and Black Pete's, all of that we took something that was made to, why do we give out candy? We give out candy because we used to put candy out on our front because otherwise demons would come and steal our children. So we took something that was scary and made it happier. Now we're giving out candy to children. It's just sort of interesting how we need to take whatever the original or current version of the holiday is and invert it in order to sort of be right in the middle of it's kind of scary, but not really. Because the other thing that really jumped out at me is all of these movies are also comedies. to
Yes.
varying effect, but
Yeah.
none of them play it straight. So, well, actually, the last one, not the last one, but Rare Exports plays it very dead serious, but deadpan comedy. And so
Yes.
that's interesting too, that we need some sugar with our medicine if we're going to take down these holidays, which was kind of interesting.
Okay, I want to put a footnote on that point because I have thoughts as well on it. Interesting, Ray. What do you think about the whole conceit?
The thing that I kept thinking about the most is, when I was 4 years old, somebody showed me Friday the 13th Part 4, and it scared the hell out of me. And I just kept wondering what would happen if I was a kid and someone showed me one of these movies.
Yes.
Would I still be as into Christmas or whatever the holiday may be that the movie is about? Even though these movies, for the most part, are just ridiculous cheesiness, it's just a really interesting take, and I like what Tommy said about our need to invert things.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at movies like Leprechaun and The Mean One, and these are movies that. Well, and Leprechaun, I take that back. It doesn't really do what I'm saying. It doesn't do much. But when you look at movies like The Mean One, like they're literally doing that, right? They're taking a thing and they're showing exactly what you're describing, right, Ray? Like this is a town that has given up Christmas essentially because they were shown a scary movie too early. In this case, the scary movie was The Grinch was in the living room, and it's sort of an alternate future from the point that Cindy gives the necklace and a kiss, but it turns it into a town that has given up on Christmas because ostensibly Christmas was too scary, right? And I think that's actually really interesting, like turning Christmas into the nightmarescape. And they do the same thing in Saint, which I think is such a fascinating thing when you take this holiday that normally is a holiday of goodness and kindness and generosity and goodwill toward fellow humans, and you make it a thing that is ostensibly Halloween, right? You make it a thing where everybody has to go in at night and be scared. And I thought that was fascinating. So let's take a beat and let's talk about some nerd stuff and try to ask the question, why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we do this to ourselves? I think the answer is because we can't help it. Tom?
Well, I think it also kind of like my pseudo smart thing about Halloween and inversion and stuff is also when you look back far enough, everything's a lot of times is terrible.
Yeah.
Like they didn't make up this Krampus. They didn't make up Saint Nicholas. Santa used to put children in sacks. That was the thing.
Right.
And then we commercialized it. And so it's kind of like how all of like Disney properties, if you go back far enough, the traditional ones, if you go back to Brothers Grimm, it was some really dark stuff. There were no happy endings. No one ever got the princess. They just ended up being burned alive or being eaten by a wolf. And so it's interesting. I talked about inversion, but it's also the smoothing out of these things.
Yeah.
So there is something weird. It's kind of like picking at a scab almost, that it's not taking something beautiful and then inverting it. It's like, well, yeah, what did we do originally? Where did this all come from? And a lot of it was because we were terrified of the dark and we didn't understand anything. Yeah. And so we put candy out and we let certain songs.
We thought candy would be the solution. Like,
right, exactly.
Remember the Halcyon days when candy fixed stuff?
Yeah, right. We believed that there was, like for Halloween, that there was a day where the line or the shimmer between life and death was actually so thin that we had to do something about it. And so, I think it goes back to, it's just these filmmakers realizing so much of what we did comes from ritual, and so much of ritual comes from fear.
I've been noodling on that concept of inversion, subversion, right? The act of turning happy symbols dark, because it feels like one of the things they're doing, like to my cerebral cortex, is like interrupting the nostalgia nerve, right? They're saying, look, the thing that you are nostalgic about is actually something that you don't understand completely, right? We're pushing you to think about the thing that you hold dear. And when you see it presented in this light, to actually question your sort of fidelity to it or fandom of it, right? Just saying like, look at what Santa could do, or look at what happens when we say there are lots of Santas and they're nudists too. That we'll talk about that. So I think that's part of it. The other part is catharsis, right? Because watching evil characters allows us to experience taboo desires and urges and relationships vicariously in a safe fictional setting, right? We can set ourselves higher above it, and it can be thrilling watching cherished characters break rules, right? Break mores and taboos. It's thrilling to watch that happen, even if we don't understand quite how to talk about it or what it is that's making us like that is titillating about, watching the Grinch go berserk on this town is titillating at some level because I'm so close to the story from when I was a kid. The other piece is that, watching the contrast of these pieces, I kept coming back to Gremlins, which is also holiday movie and is sort of the character definition of this, where you take a thing that's literally sweet and cuddly and beautiful and through human intervention, make it evil. Right? Like this part of what is interesting about these movies to me is that they are expressions of what we have done to make things go south in the world. Like we have made things bad. We are the ones who didn't thoroughly understand and stole from the Leprechaun, and we are the ones whose ignorance unleashed that particular evil. So all of those things out there. Does that give you a different sort of perspective on any of these movies, or is it in alignment with your expectation, Ray?
As I'm watching these movies, my thought was it almost seems like they're having a competition to see who can come out with the most schlock, Hallmark or these things, these horror movies. There are so many of these types of movies, like you said up front, there are these types of movies where you take the mythos of the holiday, and then there are also, the slashy, stabby holiday movies. There's so many of them, and it almost seems to me like maybe there's somebody out there who wants to be making fun of those traditions and those things that we draw our holidays from. St. Nicholas and things like that. It seems to me like there are people out there who are sick of all the cheery, uber saccharine feeling that Christmas usually brings. It seems to me like a lot of people make these movies to kind of be the opposite, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like a strike back against the over commercialization, for instance. It's saying we have made this into a whatever that Paul McCartney Simply Having a Wonderful Christmas Time, which I think is the Leprechaun of Christmas songs. I think it's the worst song that I have to hear in my Kroger every year. But yeah, it's pushing back against that. It's like we've made this into almost a grotesque of cheer, but it's so homogenized and so forced and starts earlier every year. And it's really this commercialization is at the bottom of all of it, to go back to the roots and say, no, this started because of something else.
Yeah.
It is fun. I mean, I think it's a punch back at some of those things, like Ray is saying.
Totally. And it's also represents the difference between why these movies that are dealing with, particularly in the case of Saint and Rare Exports, dealing with national culture, and national history and reinterpretation of those things is part of the and the difference between that and like a movie that uses a guy with a knife and a Santa suit, because a guy with a knife and a Santa suit, the Santa suit's camouflage. Like that's the part that makes the thing subversive, is that we're using a symbol but it's still an evil guy, and he could just be wearing a hoodie or a cloak or a whatever given the context. It's just another like token of camouflage. These movies, we're saying, look, the actual thing that you love, to Ray's point earlier, the actual thing that you love, kids, is coming to get you. The actual thing. It's not a sociopath in a suit. It's a guy that could be stark naked and still want to eat you or kidnap you or whatever, right? And I think it takes us back, like Tom, to your point, the origin stories of Grimm fairy tales are designed to tell kids, don't do this thing right now. If you go out into the woods, the witch is going to put you into an oven and eat you, right?
Right.
Don't go do that thing. Teach a life lesson with lots of bad endings. So to your point earlier that I wanted to hang up a flag on, why is it that these movies didn't necessarily end? Well, I guess did they end as badly as Grimm did to your eye? Like when you watch these movies, were they generally like sad, horrible endings?
No, the bad guys lose.
Right.
They come back, as we know, especially in the case of Jack Frost and Leprechaun, which I do want to at some point talk about. Why those?
Yeah.
Those both, unlike the other ones, have like 4 or 5 sequels. Like they really hitted it out of the park, and they are the worst of all of these. And so it's just interesting that those, maybe it's just the cheapness of it, that it's just the easiest to bring back and forth. And also Jack Frost is I'm realizing now, based on your thesis and sort of what you're talking about, Jack Frost is kind of the outlier.
Adjacent.
Jack Frost is a guy in a suit.
Yes.
It turns out he's a crazy person that just ends up becoming a snowball who can move around through osmosis with water.
But becomes
everybody else is
inextricably linked to the snowball, right? He is the creature. It's not like he
becomes Frosty the Snowman, basically.
Yeah. Right. He is Frosty the Snowman.
But he was a bad guy before, instead of like going back to the ancient.
Exactly. And it is also the most sort of tied to other metaphors we've covered on the show, right? Fear of technology. Look at what we have done. This is all about, the thing that turns him into a snowball is that they crash into a truck full of genetic experiments and goo that are future experiment technology language hand wavy. And that makes him the snowman. And that in and of itself might be a hat on a hat for this movie. Like, had we just picked the story up a little bit later when it was just Evil Frosty with a little bit of Book and the Vampire, it might have even been a better movie, right? Like,
sure.
I didn't necessarily care for the the truck crash backstory. I didn't need it.
Right.
So we have officially, I think, started talking about the movies. I think the bottom line on the nerd stuff is this, like all of the movies we talk about, it's an exercise in escapism, and we know holidays can be stressful and chaotic and family and all these things, and you may watch these movies and think, gosh, wouldn't it be great if the in-laws were actually hanging out with Jack Frost, or it's okay because we're pushing at taboos watching movies to get this stuff out. So mix of complicated psychological factors in these movies. So let's start, Tom. Unleash. Let's start with Leprechaun.
Oh my God. This was rough. And I'm really glad that this was the first one, because as I think I already said, they got exponentially better in quality, in vision, in tone, writing, everything.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no, if they're all like this, this is going to be really rough, because this movie it's rough acting. It is so time-stamped. One of the the interesting thing about it for me was seeing Jennifer Aniston already Anistoning.
Yes.
Like she's already of herself. And the movie seems to be completely in love with her, and rightfully so, because they just let her drag scenes on. Like this part of the script is she reluctantly goes in the house. And I think that's a 20-minute long sequence where she stops and she like looks at her shoe and she looks up at the door, and it's like, oh my God, we have missed St. Patrick's Day. Like, it is done. And they just sit on her, which was really kind of fun. But she's fun. Everyone else is ridiculous. The fact that the whole thing is because she's trying to like show that she's not scared to the local weirdo who was like not introduced and just shows up in the middle of a scene carrying paint thinner. This is like old school. We have $2. Let's make a movie. And how do you make things scary? Put cobwebs on everything. They filled at some point off screen. They filled the refrigerator with food, but they don't take down one cobweb from the kitchen. I think that's amazing. It is the most cobwebby house ever. It's so weird. Okay, sorry. That's it.
The film was written and directed by Mark Jones. It came out in 1993. Of course, this is another film though that actually brings us Warwick Davis as Lubdan the Leprechaun, and I do like how this movie came about. It was Mark Jones who says he was inspired by the Lucky Charms commercials to create a leprechaun character, and the quote only twist was to make the character an antagonist. So this movie is like one creative generation away from a serial icon. And I think that shows on screen.
I would have rather seen Boo Berry. That would be the movie that I want to see.
So
I was making a joke about how terrible There's Nothing to Watch. Some of the things that I did find a little interesting, and I didn't bother looking them up, and maybe I should, is it certainly fleshed out the idea of leprechauns more than I knew. I didn't know that they had a thing for shoes. I didn't know that there was a shoe connection. I didn't realize that four-leaf clovers are like a cross to vampires to them, that they have some sort of like containment thing. Did you look up? Is that all true?
Leprechaun
I can't
lore?
imagine the movie. Yeah, Leprechaun lore. I can't imagine that the movie just made those up.
I knew of the shoes.
Really? The shoes? That's just a
the
thing?
The shoes were a thing that I knew. I didn't know that they were like thirsty for shoes, like Lubdan was. Like that became a central point in their ability to distract him. Was like, we just need to show him all our shoes, and all he could do is like polish shoes in the dark.
Yeah.
Like that just felt strange to me. That's how they wanted to do it. But the four-leaf clover, I did not know. I always thought the four-leaf clover was the lucky one. Didn't you guys?
Right.
Like,
It is for us, but I guess maybe what's lucky for us is unlucky for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I do know that it was, like, as you say, it was fun to see, Jennifer Aniston in this thing, very young, and Warwick Davis. Obviously, I am a fan of Warwick Davis. This movie in his catalog of films, it doesn't really stand out next to all of the stuff that he has done with Star Wars. And yet this movie, and Star Wars and Willow, of course, this movie somehow ended up getting more made. I don't understand it. But I
then even like weirdly
right.
crossed over with Leprechaun Back to the Hood.
Yeah,
when we didn't realize that racism, Leprechaun 4 in Space. Yeah, it really. I don't know why it.
There are actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 with a 9th. Good Lord,
what?
A 9th untitled Leprechaun reboot, apparently in the works. So,
oh my gosh,
Leprechaun 4 in Space, Leprechaun in the Hood, Leprechaun Back to the Hood, Leprechaun Origins, and Leprechaun Returns. So,
Leprechaun Origins. That's what I want.
Yeah.
I want the Star Wars Episode 1 of Leprechaun. Yeah.
So maybe we should watch that, and that will tell us all about four-leaf clovers and why they became so evil for leprechauns. This movie was the first one under the actual Trimark in-house production of Trimark Pictures for theatrical exhibition. So auspicious start, Trimark. They've also made other movies that we should talk about with more enthusiasm. So let's move on to Jack Frost. Now, you said you like Jack Frost more than Leprechaun.
I thought the writing was stronger. The acting was weirder and stronger. Like, everyone in Leprechaun doesn't seem to know what kind of movie they're in. Jack Frost, they do. They're playing it weird on purpose. One of the cops is legitimately stupidly funny. Like, they all know. Jack Frost is incredibly unfunny, same as the character in Leprechaun, but everything around it seems to know it's a heightened reality.
Yeah.
It doesn't really kind of always make sense. And I noticed that the director of this movie wrote one of my favorite horror movies,
which is
ever, Identity, starring John Cusack. Unless I looked up the wrong IMDb, I was like, who's behind this? And he
Michael
wrote
Cooney.
Identity, which is outstanding.
That's amazing.
It's just, like, as soon as like the sleigh cuts off the bully's head and it's followed by the saddest, slowest version of God Rest You Merry Gentlemen, I was like, this movie has some vision behind it. You know what I mean? Like, it's going in
Well,
gross, but also kind of like fun.
well, and look at, I
And-
mean, you say the movie knows what it is in a way that Leprechaun didn't. And I think you're absolutely right, because Leprechaun was intended to be a straight horror movie. And it was actually Warwick Davis that brought the comedy, and they had to do a whole bunch of reshoots. And add increased gore on the high end for adult audiences and increased comedy for everybody else, and so the movie ends up kind of a hodgepodge of uncertainty in a way that I agree with you. I think Jack Frost,
that should have been the title for this episode: hodgepodge of uncertainty. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
I think Jack Frost does have a bit of self-awareness to it that I think elevates it a bit.
A bit, yeah.
Ray, what'd you think? Did you want to immediately go out and build a snowman?
No, I wanted to immediately shut the TV off.
Did not connect with Jack Frost.
No, I hated that movie, man. But the second one is way worse. So,
Oh, yeah. And that is also not a Michael Keaton vehicle.
Coming off of Leprechaun, this one definitely seemed more adult.
Mm-hmm.
I think Leprechaun, at least this is the impression that I got, kind of felt like it was trying to kind of play toward kids a little bit, in as much as it could, being a horror film.
And I think that's part of the hodgepodge. I think that Warwick Davis brought his thing, and his thing is kids love me, man. And and so you don't do that. I think what you get with Jack Frost is a much more sort of it's almost an 80s era 90s horror movie, because you end up with more of the titillating stuff. You get Shannon Elizabeth's debut in this movie, and
let me say that Shannon Elizabeth scene, that's something that I don't think they would have done in a movie like Leprechaun. It just seems like a little too far for something like Leprechaun.
Yeah. And it had this been a different movie, had this been a just marginally more sophisticated movie, they wouldn't have had that scene in the movie. That was, that felt like that dated the movie to me. That just made it feel like I know exactly what I'm watching. I could truck with the maniacal bad guy. I could truck with the snowman that could move around by frosting and defrosting himself at will. And then I realized, oh, okay, right. This is also kind of a, when she dies in the bathtub, kind of her naked body sort of wrapped around the snowman in just a weird, talk about non-titillating way.
Right.
It's not even sexy, guys. It's just cold. So yeah, I think I think it's a really interesting. It's an interesting conceit, and yet again, we have more Jack Frost movies. At least we have the one, Jack Frost 2: Revenge of the Mutant Killer Snowman, which I imagine is exactly what you get.
One thing that does connect Jack Frost and Leprechaun is they come in with their first movies already like what Freddy Krueger became in number 3. He comes in with one-liners. Like he's already welcome to prime time, B-word.
Yeah.
Like Leprechaun and Jack Frost have all these legitimately horrible one-liners, but maybe that's a part of its appeal. Like you go in and you groan along with the comedy because they're not really well written. I think there's actually some legitimately funny parts of Jack Frost. None of the things that Jack Frost says are funny, but it seems to have that kind of Arnold Schwarzenegger, we know what we're doing here at the very end. The guy says we iced him. Like that's bargain basement writing, but but that was so popular then.
Yeah.
Now we've really gotten away from that. Now our action stars, for instance, I said, they barely talk. Like in the last John Wick, he said nothing. He said 3 words. One thing that I really did like about Jack Frost, my favorite part, is when the puddle starts coming in under the door and the FBI guy pulls a gun and shoots at the puddle. I was like, oh my God. I thought that was incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. Classic FBI, classic Bureau.
But do we think that that's, maybe I'm just grasping at straws, but that is something that the other movies don't have? Is this one-liner kind of 80s sensibility? Could that be what?
Well,
brings people back, like it's that kind of safe camp added with gore.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Tom, because I think camp is its own market draw, right? Like
Yeah.
when we already know the movie's coming in with a wink and a nod, which softens the horror, maybe,
Right.
in a way that Saint and Rare Exports do not, right?
Yeah.
These first two, they're also decidedly American movies, right? These two, the Leprechaun and Jack Frost, feel
Right.
deeply American, and Saint and Rare Exports is like, oh, we're going to do something really goofy, but just wait, because we're probably going to be more thoughtful about it.
Yeah.
And Rare Exports actually gets into like colonialism with
Yeah.
like America, capitalism coming in and messing everything up by blowing
sure.
things, by blowing up burial mounds. But we'll get there.
Yeah. So that was Jack Frost, which I think I think I'm on Team Tom, where it was marginally better than Leprechaun, but we're still on an upward climb on these movies. Ray, it feels like you like Jack
They
Frost
still hurt
less
you.
than Leprechaun.
I like Leprechaun a little bit more, just because it just I don't know, just doesn't feel as dumb, which sounds dumb of me to say.
Yeah.
Because
Okay. All right.
There was one other thing that Jack Frost did, that when they said it proves the soul exists and that it's a chemical. That was something that was an interesting, when the guy was talking about how the acid, the genetic acid, and you need an acid that would bond a human chromosome to an inert material. At some point he says it proves the soul exists and that the soul is a chemical. I was like, oh, all right. Someone was excited for that part of the movie. Like the movie does a big swing of smart and interesting in a movie where they're throwing away their guns and instead drawing hair dryers.
Yeah.
It's just, I like it when every once in a while a different version of a script, like part of it peeks through and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
you were trying to say something?
We forgot
And then
to
you
cut
have
that bit of smarts.
Right. And you left in the part where the kid makes oats with antifreeze. Okay, great.
Okay, so Jack Frost leads us to, we jump a decade really to 2010's Saint. Now, Saint, as we mentioned, now we're moving. It is a Dutch film, and it is a different take. The whole idea of Saint is that we're talking about December 5th, and apparently on December 5th, 1492. You'll remember 1492 from something else, right? Wink.
Mhm.
Members of a gang led by former Bishop Nicholas are killed by villagers who refuse to put up with the gang's looting and killing any longer. In years in which the gang's death date coincides with a full moon, the gang returns, the demonic undead gang returns as murderous ghosts. This movie also has blackface, which I thought was another interesting choice, and they apologize for it at the beginning.
Right. This film includes language and or stereotypes that are inconsistent with today's standards of inclusion and may offend some viewers. I was like, what is this? Oh, right. Black Pete. And I only knew about Black Pete because of the last season of Atlanta. Donald Glover's sort of sitcom. They did an entire episode where they are in Amsterdam and dealing with the idea of people coming to the concerts as Black Pete.
So I didn't know anything about this. What?
Okay.
So, do you have any? Do you have any more? Have you become an expert on Black Pete or
on Black Pete? Well, just that like Santa didn't have elves. Santa sort of had slaves.
Yeah,
and the slaves were Black Pete, and that was it. And that's all very not great.
Yeah. It is so Black Pete, he's the companion of St. Nicholas in the folklore of the Low Countries. Traditionally, Zwarte Piet distributes candy to well-behaved children and punishes the others. The punishment part fell out of use in the 1960s. So from 1492 to the 1960s, the Black Petes came around and both punished and celebrated the children. This movie leans in on the punishment part. They go to town on an orphanage, a children's hospital. There's just a lot of damage that St. Nick and the Black Petes do. They also take December 5th and they turn it into an outright, like a day to fear.
Right.
All right. Ray, how'd this one hit you?
I liked it. Generally, I really liked the religious angle on this movie. The fact that in the beginning, you see this bishop, this church man, and he's got the tall hat, he's got the staff, church man. That's the right term.
Churchman.
That's actually the sequel, Saint 2, Churchman.
And you see this guy and he's doing these terrible things and they kill him for it. And then I think there's even a line later in the movie whenever, the ghost of St. Nicholas is coming back and killing all these people. And someone says, well, do you really think the church wants everyone to know about this or something like that? And that titillated me because I am not a fan of organized religion. And I thought it was a good choice for the filmmakers to kind of tackle it from that angle.
And we get the crazy police inspector, who's like over the top, made me feel like I was watching Wolfen again.
When he walks in and shoots the present on his desk.
Right, exactly.
That's the version of shooting the puddle.
Yeah.
It's a way of just making the person insane and the movie insane, and then says strap in. And this movie does that even in the cold open. Kids are not safe. I mean, two of the kids of the family get sucked up the chimney. Right away, this movie's like, we're not Leprechaun.
Yeah.
But we are kind of Leprechaun. It's weird. It's a very interesting, this one nailed the tone for the most part for me. It's heightened, it's weird. I loved the rooftop chase. I hated it at first when the horse was going on the rooftop. And then I was like, wait a minute, this is actually pretty well shot.
Yeah.
The music, it's every once in a while, it's like slowing down and the music sort of does like a matrixy look at what we're doing right now as it jumps from building to building. I was like, oh, this movie's actually kind of badass.
Yeah.
And I really loved the idea of the whole thing is a cover-up, that the government knows this is happening.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is a cover-up, and they take the one person that knows what's going on and has been desperately trying to make it stop and blame everything on him.
Yeah.
Calling him a serial killer. That is so cynical. And I mean, paying off the young hero to like go along with it, and then just showing, like you said, the orphanage, all of the horrible things that have happened. It's almost like a Reichstag fire. It's really cynical and really weird and interesting.
I think the thing that the movie suffers from budget, because that rooftop chase is fantastic and CG, and at times they're doing some things that are really objectively cool that don't look as cool as they could, and I think we've come to expect them to look really good, and they're immediately dated. And
there's some basic green screen stuff, which is like try a different green.
Ooh. It's not working green. Your slip is showing kind of stuff. Like, it's just not it's not great. But that's unfortunate, because you can tell like the intention and the structure is really good. I'm with you. It's bonkers. And when we start getting, the things that Saint Nick can do with his staff in terms of just straight up beheadings and things like that, it was really exciting and threatening. And I love the idea, the whole concept that the city comes alive in this way that is so threatening, like it becomes its own undoing. And I thought it was great. I love that it's kind of a pirate ship story too. Like at the end, their whole objective is we got to blow up a pirate ship. That seems like, okay, throw something else in there, guys. It's just great. Like, we need another thing. So I had a really good time with that. The movie was written and directed by Dick Maas. It is apparently quite a controversial film. The tone suddenly makes sense when you look at other stuff Dick Maas has done, and of course it's he's done some other Dutch films, De Lift, Amsterdammed, and Flodder, which I also have not seen, but one episode of Young Indiana Jones. That's not the thing that describes how bonkers he is. Also did a whole bunch, or at least 4 music videos for the band Golden Earring. If you grew up in my town, then you grew up singing
Love,
Twilight Zone.
I've never heard of such a thing.
Night, Moonlight, When the Lady Smiles, and Turn the World Around. Also, Billy Falcon, Mai Tai, Marco Borsato. It was a music video director, and that suddenly explains more of the tone of this movie. Like, it's a kitchen sink symbol movie.
Well, you know, after I watched this, I was suggested another Dick Moss movie, which is Rumpelstiltskin, which
Oh, he did that?
sounds a lot like this. Yeah.
I saw that a
Interesting.
zillion years ago. Huh.
Made me want to see it.
Bringing up the idea of the cover up, bringing up the idea of what happened with the renegade, what they called a renegade, murderous renegade bishop, that it's also very Wes Craven-y. Everyone in this town is paying the price for what their elders did. It's the children paying for the adults, because everyone burned Freddy Krueger up, and then that let him come back and start messing with all the descendants. So that's always fun. And that's also a big symbol of paying, you know, what happened back in history never really goes away.
Yeah.
And we're condemned to repeat it. I also did enjoy at times how unapologetically foreign it was, just in the phrase. And I rewound the scene. I was like, wait, is there more to this? No, here's a quote. He sails an old schooner. That's why we put our shoes out. What? Like, that is the most foreign two phrases put together. I don't know what any of that means. And I rewound it to see, like, wait, is there more to that? Or no, he sails an old schooner. That's why we put our shoes out. And I was like, yeah, there was in the beginning of the movie. They were putting like a carrot in a clip-clop shoe. I just like how they didn't
in a clip.
Yeah. We never intended anyone outside of this city to see it. And that's another thing.
I just love that.
Right.
Yeah.
This is not a spiritual horror that befalls the planet, right? This is a thing.
Yeah.
This evil bishop and the Black Pete's are out specifically against Amsterdam.
village.
Like this, this town is the thing that is suffering as a result of what they did in 1492. And I think that's actually really, really fun to gate it, to put such guardrails around the story. This is why no one else would ever have heard of it, and why apparently they didn't expect anyone outside of Amsterdam to see it.
Right.
That leads us to rare exports. You guys. Oh my God, with this movie. I was so surprised at this movie.
Right?
So surprised. Neither of you had seen it.
No.
Never heard of it. And that's why I'm so thankful to skip to the end of this podcast. Never would have heard of it.
Yeah.
And if I would have heard of it, would never have watched it. What? Lapland, reindeer? Like, just, if you were to describe it to me, I'd be like, nope.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that I watched it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But before we talk about like what is happening in the movie, I just have to say the movie made me think so much of Sorry to Bother You.
Oh, interesting.
Because
I love that movie.
This movie has a twist that made me feel the same way the twist in Sorry to Bother You made me feel. Like when they cut to the horse guy, I was on the floor. Like I thought that was amazing. This movie, I could not have. A million monkeys, a million typewriters could not have written the climax of this movie for me in my head. I could not predict what they were trying to do.
Of where mall Santas come from.
Bonkers. For 85 grand, that's all they need. 85 grand. So the story is we have these reindeer hunters, small village, and they subsist on reindeer. When the reindeer come, they hunt the reindeer, they live off the reindeer, and they leave the reindeer or they sell the reindeer, and that's what gets them through the year. And some of the horror is just in life in this village, right? When the boy goes to his dad's workshop and dad says, close your eyes, I'm working. It's because he's going at a carcass with an axe. And that's just life. That's not even a horror story.
Of a reindeer. Of like an animal.
Yeah. Right. And that's just his job, is to do this thing to another once was living creature. And that is in itself, to a lot of people, terrifying. And so that, like, I think sets the table for what this movie is. It's like super grounded. It is a super grounded and very dry experience. Well, we find out that it turns out they've found a Santa Claus who had been frozen and buried in a burial mound that has now become a mountain, and this organization has uncovered it and blown up the mountain to retrieve this evil Santa Claus, and these guys catch it in a wolf trap. And that is another side of this movie, that they build the fear around the wolves, which we never see. There are no
Right.
wolves in this movie, but man, they make you think they're right around the corner. It turns out all it was the evil Santa Claus. And the Santa Claus, what they've been doing is they've been kidnapping. Spoiler alert, you guys, just really go watch this movie. The point is they're taking the children, just like the lore said, and they're trying to rejuvenate this giant, massive, horned original Santa Claus, and this is the story of the undoing of that plan. Along the way, it turns out, and check me on this because I'm not sure that I have it. It turns out that the helpers of the Santa Claus are other Santa Clauses, and they roam the woods naked in support of their efforts to redeem this Santa Claus. They're like feral. These are feral, naked Santa
elves,
Clauses.
though?
So
I believe they're called elves.
they call them elves. Okay, they all.
Yeah.
So they look like
because
Santa
when the
Clauses.
American guy that's paying for everything goes up to the one that they've caught, he says, "This is not a Santa Claus. You've caught an elf." Everyone smile. Everyone put So those are elves, and elves in this movie is just old man penis. It's just they're extremely old naked men, and
with the white beards, like they look like Santa Claus, like they are the trappings of Santa Claus, and that's the conceit, and that's why I think we're using the words interchangeably. Because at least I am, because they support this big Santa Claus that does not look like a Santa Claus. He has the horns, and he's frozen in ice, and he's really big, like multiple stories tall. Right. Like a giant. He's a Titan. Santa Titan. He belongs in Godzilla. And so this is this at the end of the movie, because they have these key skills. These skills, they herd up all of the naked old men Santas, and this is where the twist comes. I thought they were going to farm them for meat. I thought they were going to eat the Santas, sell the Santas because they lost their reindeer. But it turns out they go into they start training the Santas to become their ambassadors of holiday cheer for money. And so it is the ultimate expression of commercialization in the holidays. And I had a great time with this movie. So I probably oversold what the movie was about, but I want to hear what you guys thought. What was your experience watching this?
This was my favorite one of all of these movies. Like you said, like just completely surprised me. But two things stood out to me that I just couldn't shake. One was at the beginning of the movie, these two kids somehow scaled an entire damn mountain without being missed.
Oh, right.
Like
that's the thing we're concerned about in this movie.
Yes.
Giant Santa, Ray. Giant Santa.
And then I thought the other thing was concerning the giant Santa. You know, they're trying to hurry up and destroy this giant Santa before he wakes up. But I like how they take the time to cut his horns off.
Trophy. I loved it. I loved that. That was really great.
No, but seriously, I did really enjoy this movie. It was so unique and so fun. At least as fun as it can be watching a child being chased by 198 naked men.
Real fun, it turns out.
Yeah, real fun. Well, also because this is also a child's hero story, right? As weird as it is, we get this kid who comes up with the answer. He's what, 11 years old, 10, 11, 12 years old, something like that. And he's the kid who says, hey, community, we have skills to actually solve this 198 roaming herd of Santa Clauses, elves in the woods. We can treat them like reindeer and use the helicopter and the bait to actually catch them. And I thought that was really kind of stupidly heartwarming.
It's also a redemption story. Like he gets his dad to be proud of him. It is a daddy issues story to go with what you were saying of how grim life is. He's just walking around with a shotgun the whole time. He has to go to the bathroom in his tidy whities because that's what life is. Yeah. And he rides on a helicopter parachute kind of a thing. Like he's in peril all the time, but it's just expected. Like it's almost like that we just breed them differently up there.
Yeah.
I liked in the beginning that instead of over the opening credits, instead of the Book of the Vampire, we have the Book of the Santa, which is fun, showing all of the horrible things that Santa does.
For sure.
And then the style of the Advent calendar, and then showing the big barn where there was some really neat style to it. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And there was some real deadpan comedy played extremely straight. And the way that they do it is no one ever says, "What are you talking about? It's Santa." They say, "We've got to use him as a hostage and get money. We're going to sell Santa." Straight face. Straight face. And that really works. It puts you into this craziness.
Yeah, I feel like there is a lot going on in this movie, and it's punching above its class for sure. I thought it was super, super fun. This is from Jalmari Helander, who the movie was based on 2 shorts, Rare Exports Inc., which is apparently out there on YouTube, and I only discovered that right before we started, so I haven't watched it yet. And the second one's Rare Exports: The Official Safety Instructions from 2005, and this is again Helander's work as writer-director. And so, this is taking the idea of this feature-length film that shunts those 2 things together. It practically had a cult reputation before the movie actually was made, and so it was kind of guaranteed to be of interest to folks. So the U.S. Title was Rare Exports: A Christmas Tale. I like it just as Rare Exports. I think it hides it hides just the right amount. I think it's really great. They made some great choices. So that's Rare Export. Now, I think Ray and I should talk just briefly about The Mean One, because Tom, you didn't have an opportunity to watch this one.
No, I'm sorry.
Ray, what do you think?
I rewatched Leprechaun.
This movie was bonkers.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty much what you would expect from a movie like this, trying to use the Grinch IP as legally
without using the
could.
Grinch IP, right? Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
It's very much a Winnie the Pooh kind of blood and honey thing, which is like, let's take this thing that we know so well and let's, again, subvert it and see what kind of fun we can have with it. This one, weirdly, though, makes so much more sense than Blood and Honey, because Winnie the Pooh, they were always lovable characters, and just imagining them going feral is a challenge. And this movie, imagining the Grinch, who is already portrayed as evil, just staying evil and cementing himself as more so over the intervening years, makes complete sense to me, right? Like the movie's concept makes a ton of sense. And the portrayal of the Grinch as this character that is pulling performative aspects from the Ron Howard version of it. Like he's walking on his little tiptoes and he's sneaking around like a pizza joint and then completely butchering crowds of fans. Like it's just, it ends up being a fun, weirdly gruesome exploration of this thing that is so familiar. And the girl who Cindy, who originally saw the Grinch stealing her Christmas and gave him a kiss and his heart grew 3 sizes too big. That saved the Grinch in How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Here, Cindy's mom comes in and sees that Cindy is talking to this monster, and mom goes bonkers and attacks the Grinch. So the Grinch just thinks everybody's scared of him, and in the melee, mom is killed. That creates this. That just makes the monster more monstrous and creates this Christmas killings thing. Tom, to your point earlier, like talking about the mystery of the legend of the Christmas killer, the whole town seems to be, or at least the leaders of the town, the mayor and the chief of police, they all know that this thing is out there and they conspire to hide it. And they do that. This is one of the most diabolical plans to actually keep the monster at bay, because they know the monster will come for Christmas. Like if it hears any Christmas song, it's there and ready to eat you. They create a website that lures hikers to their mountain because around Christmas, the hikers will come and hike the mountain to intentionally feed the monster. Right?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Yeah.
I will say the mayor, you know, winds up being behind that. And there's this part where, you know, she gets her just desserts.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to lie. I was kind of hoping that she was going to turn out to be the Grinch killing people. Almost
but that
like,
would have just been a dude in a suit, right? And that would have been
But
off the
true.
grid.
And it wouldn't have been on this episode, but
Yep.
I would have liked, personally, I would have liked the idea of like, here's this new in Newville who just got so sick of Christmas that he's like, I'm just going to start killing people until they get rid of Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's really the upshot, is that this is a town that is, you know, for 25 years has abolished Christmas. There are no lights. There's no nothing. You can't find Christmas in this town because everybody knows that when Christmas comes to town, people start to die. The high point of the movie, I mean, it's a movie that has moments. I liked it better than Leprechaun. I liked it even better than Jack Frost. But that's pretty much where it stops climbing. The very end, we do get to find out what happens when someone's heart grows 3 sizes too big. And then the movie ends. And you don't want that to happen. I think any cardiologist agrees. You don't want that to happen to you because it's gruesome. So this was a really fun bonus, right?
Yeah, I just want to say that one joke from this movie that I can't get out of my head is whenever the deputy is trying to lure the Grinch with a Christmas song, but he's Jewish, so he doesn't know the words. And so he's like trying to sing Jingle Bells, but he's tripping over the words. And finally he just gives up. And he's like, dreidel, dreidel, dreidel.
Which doesn't work. Oh, so good. Yeah, I think that's the... I think that's it was really funny. And I think it has moments. It has some moments. I don't know that there ever needs to be a sequel. There's also, I mean, there are some really obvious plays on the language. Like at one point they're in the restaurant and she's talking to the old wise guy who knows the truth. And he says, he's the mean one. You know, we all know him as the Gur, right as the server comes up and says, Finch, David Finch, a meal ready. So order for Finch. Like they play those kinds of games all the time to get around the IP. So it's a fun nod to something that I grew up with, and it's pretty brutal. I mean, there's the mean one does some good stuff to people if you're into that. So that's the bonus pick. Tom, you don't need to watch it. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
You don't have to retroactively do your homework. I thought this was really fun. Did you guys get anything out of this thing?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
especially as to repeat myself, I wouldn't have seen these movies.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad I saw 2 of them.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Well,
and that's a good ratio. That's fine.
yeah.
I'm grateful to you for 2 reasons. One, I saw rare exports and that was phenomenal. And the second reason I'm grateful is because I had been wanting to watch Leprechaun, the series. And now that I've seen it, I don't know that I want to finish it. So I thank you.
Hooray!
Absolved
You're
you
free
of
from
that
the curse.
Yeah. All right. So that leads us to the great reveal. What are we going to do next month? I believe the bottle has spun to you, Ray.
Oh,
Yes.
Raymond.
Well, I want to go ahead and take a look at 2 remakes, underrated remakes of Vincent Price classics. They are the 1999 remake of House on Haunted Hill and the 2005 remake of House of Wax, which I think are both terrific movies in their own right, but so different from the originals that they're really their own movies.
Outstanding.
That sounds great. I
haven't
love
seen-
House on Haunted Hill for the most part.
For the most part. There's a part of it that you really regret watching?
The second half. The isn't there someone like an influencer or someone like stunt casting in House of Wax? I don't think I ever saw it.
Group of teens, House of Wax.
Just billed as Paris Hilton. Come see Paris Hilton get killed, you know?
Okay.
Oh my gosh, you guys. You know who else is in this movie? Alicia Cuthbert.
Yeah.
My girlfriend. I love
star.
her.
We love her. How did we know? And Chad Michael Murray. This is a who's who of almost influencer stars.
Cool. This is a great idea, Ray. I love it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm looking
Yeah, I'm gonna
forward
have to watch
discussing it
these
with you guys.
immediately. Outstanding. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us this fine holiday season. May your holidays be better than everyone's holidays in all of the movies that we talked about this month. Super fun, not role model. On behalf of the good and kindly Ray Delancey and Tommy Metz III, I'm Pete Wright. We will see you back here next month in the new year. Happy horrific new year, sitting in the dark.